Welcome everybody to the last Lightman Report interview that we're going to have on technological unicorns. I see over the last 25 years, many of these have surfaced. They're very big. And in the past before that, we used to be seeing companies mainly having organic growth, maybe have some IPOs. But these days, many of these companies are sincerely at the start based on debts. Eric, have you any idea as to why we have so much trust in these companies that this is possible?
Um, I have some, I think I have some insights. Maybe you still record the last 10 years for Amazon. It was losing money every year for the past, I don't know how long, maybe 15 years. And every report, the quarterly report came out, the stock price went up. Although they're losing money consistently quarter after quarter. And now you can see Bezos is the richest person on this planet. They're making huge amount of money right now. After 10, 20 years, now they make money. They become the biggest company. So it's not all of a sudden that this happened. It's like we have a long period of time. Investors start to understand that when you have dominance in one particular technology, you will become probably the world's biggest company. Like if you look at the Fortune 500 company, before you see a lot of banks, you see a lot of oil companies, right? Coal companies. Now you see tech giants. Now you see Apple, you see Amazon, you see Google, Alpha. They call them Alpha, right? Alphabet, sorry. So they already have this expectation. I mean, investors already have this expectation that this company can grow into giants. But given the blockchain situation, I would say later on, some of the giant company won't even make to the Fortune 500 because they will not be listed on New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ. They probably just part of the blockchain crypto industry, not listed in on any of the current exchanges.
I think that brings forward a very interesting point, Alex, with regard to the difference in growth. Could you agree with Eric that in the future we will have tech giants like Google, Amazon, and all these famous names that might not even be in the Fortune 500 because they're listed in a totally different realm? Digital assets of the new era, maybe?
Well, I think if the companies are famous, they have big brand names, they will be on big exchanges for a very simple reason. Being on a big exchange is necessary to allow the big funds to be in it. So if you're on the pink sheets or over the counter, or you're not on exchanges, big funds can't buy. And you want big funds to buy because they're more likely to hold. You have a lot of day traders via a Robinhood and other things like that, but they create potential volatility and they go in on rumor and they go out on rumor. And you want to have people who are like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett says that you should basically buy a stock to hold it for 2 years. It's like, you're not supposed to change it. You want to look at the fundamentals of it.
Looking at that whole situation, I think, Eric, would it be fair to say that technology itself has something to do with these immense growth in these giants in technology? Because it seems to me like it walks hand in hand with the situation, the growth of internet, of digital commerce, and a lot of these developments that have to do with the technological development in itself. Do you think it has anything to do with creating these big giants?
Well, I think the technological innovation just accelerate itself. So it basically compounds itself. It's like a compound interest. When you have a blockchain, you have data technology, we used to call big data before, AI technology. It just add on to each other. It's like it's really a compound interest. So the technological growth will be faster and faster every year. So you will see that you will see a much faster growth. It's not that we don't have it's not like in the past we don't have big tech giants. back then, automobile is a tech giant, right? So, but the growth of the automobile is not as fast as mobile internet, because we don't have this compounding of the technology. And if you look at the U.S. Productivity growth, every year you got 3%, 3 to 5% productivity growth, and it's also compound, right? So it actually compound on top of the technology growth. So you get even faster. So it actually make tech giant, if it give you the feeling that it grow much faster than before. This will continue, I think.
I think looking at the past, you've got a point there. If I remember, the introduction of radio took about half a century before everybody had one. And then, it took 30 years for all of us to get a color TV. Maybe United States was a little faster in that one, but it took Facebook only 5 years to get 900 million people signed up. So that accelerator, that compounded interest is certainly something. Alex, do you think that it's only, I would say, the added components on top of each other that make the speed, or have we also lessons learned from the past? What do you think?
Well, we're very lucky as investors these days that we have these rules of thumb, these heuristics or algorithms. The first one is Moore's Law, which has been true since the mid-1960s and resulted in Gordon Moore becoming the richest person in California, one of the biggest economies in the world. And that is that it's, in the current way of talking about it, typically that the processing power of computers doubles every year or so, and for the same price. And the second thing that grows even faster is Metcalfe's law, named after Robert Metcalfe, the inventor of Ethernet. And that is that for every n number of users in a network, the value of the network grows by n squared. And then you have Reed's law, and Reed's law is about groups. And Reed's law works, so if you have this group and that group, that the groups will spread the message within them, and that grows even faster than Moore's law. And so if you put together the increase in processing power in mobile phones, so that the mobile phone is the computer platform that's growing, and you then add in the fact that you can have social networks, and then the fact that you can have groups within that, you're getting Moore's law times Metcalfe's law times Reed's law times, as Eric said, the productivity growth that's there underlying this. And you get the fact that startups can come into operation and they already have an operating system. So they build for Android and they have 92% of the global market. And they build additionally for iOS and they have the other 8%. So they have almost 100% of the market for 8 billion mobile phones, 5.8 billion of which are connected to the internet. And you have a bigger marketplace that you can reach with lower cost, with more algorithms and math on your side than you've ever had before. And this is part of the reason that crypto is going to win, because ultimately math beats governments, and math plus game theory beats boring math alone. Like, game theory is the most exciting chunk of math. And so what we see in these crypto applications that work on mobile phones, like DeFi, which is the next Lightman report, is about making a crypto unicorn, you have all these factors on your side. It's like flowing with a river, while another river, like you're rafting on a river and you're going a certain speed, then another river comes into it and speeds you up, then another river and another river, all of them just pushing you ahead, as long as you can avoid being stopped or bought or smashed by the monopolies, as we saw in the recent hearings that happened in the House of Representatives.
I think you bring up a very exciting point, actually. That means that the combination of several things that actually are, I would say, almost a natural law, like Moore's, Metcalfe's, and Reed's, that we come to a point, when you look at what you reported, most of these giants have been in services, in the service industry in some way or another. If we look at the current market, Eric, do you dare to predict what would be the next unicorn that's coming around the horizon? Because if they're going to be next year there, yeah. I know this is difficult, but
Well, interestingly that Alex just mentioned Moore's law. So the Moore's law says the semiconductor will double its numbers every 18 months, right? So I recently heard the news from Taiwan Semiconductor, and they are actually working on 2 nanometer technology. So I'm like thinking 2 nanometers, what are you gonna do in next 18 months? 1 nanometer? What about next 18 months, right? So I'm always thinking that for hardware growth, there will be a limitation. But for the services, there won't be a limit. Human need service, and they always want better service. So, well, it's very obvious that it has to be in this service industry to become a unicorn. Or you can become Taiwan Semiconductor, right? You only need maybe 2, 3.
I think you bring forward a very interesting point, like the physical product, not a service, but a physical product meets its limitations sooner than a service industry might. Alex, how do you feel about that? If you had, put on your daring shoes and sort of predict where our next unicorn is going to come from. Eric just pointed out that technical, I would say doubling every 18 months has, at the end of the game, its physical limits, and services will never have that. How do you see the next potential runner-up?
Well, there's a name for what Eric was pointing to about going from 2 nanometers to 1. It's called computational closure. And so if I were an entrepreneur and I wanted to get as much value out of these DNA-sponsored Lightman Reports and the interviews after them, I would look up computational closure. So there are 5 major areas where things are going to reach a limit, and then they really won't get any better because human beings can't really make use of that. I think that we see that the next kind of unicorns coming from something like OpenAI's GPT-3, where you can have something that can make prose that's humorous. I think that's one area. Another thing is that you have ocean cleanup. Ocean cleanup is something that, our ocean, ultimately everybody is going to realize that, as Sea Shepherd has said, if our oceans die, we die, and we'll realize that it's worth putting a little money to clean up the oceans. Another thing is privacy and security. Google is putting $450 million into ADT, the burglar alarm company, to integrate burglar alarm systems with Nest. So you have Google, which is taking people's data, and during the DoubleClick purchase, it said, we will not take the data from people and put it in our ads engine, but they are. So instead of selling products, they steal $300 per person worth of data monetization. And now they're in the home, and now they're going to be in charge of the burglar alarm. In theory, they could sell your information about when you do and don't set your burglar alarms to burglars. I mean, there has to be a limit to stealing people's data and doing this. So there, I could see a unicorn being, we prevent Google from stealing your data. And privacy. And I think in general, people are out of work, and they're going to need apps that help them generate income. So apps that help to queue people up for jobs, like the gig economy, but more generalized, not just DoorDash or Grubhub for food delivery, and not just for driving, but for pretty much all kinds of things. So basically apps that are saying, I have these skills, these certificates of competence, and these abilities and these references, and here are all the jobs, and just constantly matching up jobs to spit income to you, probably in crypto. I think these things are definitely unicorns.
I think it's tremendously interesting that you mentioned these 3 categories based upon the current hearings that we follow on TV. I think Google, not coincidentally, I think, has announced yesterday that they're going to add in the URLs the word that makes it clear as to where these ads that you get unwanted and asked for, where they come from. So they are sort of anticipating that we might have an opinion on what you just stated about them coming into the home and sort of have an internal market of companies of their own, marketing it left and right, because that's at the end of the game what's going to happen. let us end on a positive note. I certainly think that your outline, Eric, on how you see technology have its limits in its physical hardware appearance, and Alex, you adding the great scientific wording to that, I think it's one of the most, I would say, most memorable things that comes out of this interview, because it makes us aware that the future is going to be so much different from the past 30 years and the world around us. I would like to end on this note, looking really forward to looking into the Lightman reports on, I would say, the giants that are really in our industry in the next Lightman report. And I want to thank you for today. Eric, Alex, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Annemieke. Thank you,
Bye.
Eric.